Welcome back, everybody. Episode 20, the Field Veteran Podcast. Can't wait to get to know better my two guests today. So I got Chelsea and Ken or Kenneth, whichever one he goes by. He's got a lot of other titles after his name, so I know what that feels like. But so before I turn it over to these guys and we all get to know each other, let me self-promote here. So if you guys don't know me, that's why I've got a podcast. I'm the best in the world at helping veterans with get their money. So one of the main items is I'm a for-profit. So I get to talk about all the money that I know about. Every veteran is worth anywhere from $5,000 to $7,500 a month that they don't know about, tax-free, by the way. And the government hides all your money in different places. That's why there's so many different nonprofits out there about like, well, let me tell you about property taxes. We'll stay in my lane. Let me tell you about kids' money for your college money for your kids. That's in another silo. Well, I'm a for-profit, so everything I know, I'm able to deliver to you guys. And so I've now delivered over $10 billion to my clients in 5 or 6 years. So I've worked with all the way up to SEAL teams and Delta and MARSOC and 160 and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm now going into my 6th year of doing this, and you probably haven't heard of me. And that's because I'm a silent professional helping other silent professionals out there. And now I'm breaking my silence like a lot of us are of like, hey, this is pretty fucked up that the government is taking legit stealing, guys, hear this, $50 billion a month, $50 billion a month from our veterans and their families. How fucking sick is that? Not anymore. So like Dan Bongino says, QT time is over. So yeah, I'm out here. I got a podcast, got guests that we're in chat with. But yeah, so one menu item that I work with is helping you guys get your money and life-changing, crazy money. It's insane. And then I also help out with your empire. And so that could be a for-profit, non-profit, whatever it is that you want to have going. Why is it that after World War II, all these veterans came home and they were entrepreneurial? They put their head down, they put their grit to work. And then now after all the other wars and combat zones, that hasn't really happened at that level. So sure, you know, probably a small sprinkle of big names like Grunt Style and stuff like that, but you probably don't know who Ken is and who Chelsea are. That's a problem. That's why we're here. So that's what we're going to share with today. Bridging That Gap is my book. So you see in the corner there, the first $5 to give. And that went to #1 on pre-sale, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate everybody on that pre-sale launch. So #1 on Amazon's list. And it is strategically placed in several places. So like The Art of War. So any kind of leadership out there, they're going to see my book. Awesome. If they look up personal growth, so things are personal finance and personal growth. So things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Anybody looks up his book, you're going to find my book in the same area in the top 10, 20, 30, 40 of those. So yeah, I want to make sure I'm getting out in front of you guys. So we're working on getting the forward written by somebody who has a bigger audience than me. So that's one of the last things that we're working on right now before we actually go live with that. But just to let you guys know, this is not the book, but it's about this exact same size. It's going to be a little bit survival guide, easy to read. I'm not putting a whole bunch of fluff in there because you guys need to know about these other F words. So definitely always have to start off with faith, family, your own fitness, but you got to know about your finances and all that kind of jazz too. And that's where my little survival guide, it's so small and so inexpensive, but so valuable that I want you guys out there, like my airline pilot clients, I want you to buy like 10 of them. Have them in your fucking hip pocket. This is hip pocket. So put it in your hip pocket, and every time you go somewhere, I want you to hand one out to somebody and then go buy more so you can hand out more. #1 line I hear from veterans is, I don't know what I don't know. Other line after that is, Albert, I wish I would have known you sooner. So you guys connect the dots on that. I was actually interviewed yesterday. It was supposed to be a 30-minute interview, and I was interviewed for almost 2 hours. And this guy was talking more about not financial impact, but impact. And I said, well, a line that I throw out to people to really just get the hooks in on them is that the #1 item people say to me is that they wish they would have known me sooner. And it's like, really? Holy shit. Why? Well, when you deliver life-changing money and you're in the room with people, and if you guys knew who I was in the room with just this week, you'd probably pee a little. So just letting you know, it's pretty awesome shit. So anyway, that's enough about me, guys. I'm going to turn over to these cats. And both of them got in the room at the same time So let's go ladies first. Chivalry is not dead. Ladies first. Chelsea, good to see you. Let us know about a minute or so about you so we can get to know you better.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Chelsea. I have a machine shop that I co-own with my husband Dave. We're both Army veterans. We met in ROTC up at Central Michigan University. Dave was he actually enlisted in the military right out of high school. I think he did the split year where he did in between his junior and senior year of high school. But anyways, he was in ROTC with me at Central Michigan, and that's how we met. And then he became an Apache Army pilot, and then I went into the Quartermaster Officer Training Program, and then we both were in the military Army for a while and got out and started a machine shop here in Michigan. This is where all our family's from, so we ended up back here in Southwest Michigan. So that is what we're doing. We've got one kid, he's 16, and we chase him around pretty much all day after work. So that's what keeps us busy.
Good stuff. Ken, fire away.
I'm sorry?
I said, Ken, fire away. Good stuff. Appreciate you, Chelsea.
Nice to meet you, Chelsea. Albert, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. I too am originally from Michigan. Went to Western Michigan University, so Chelsea will have to talk at some point. But I grew up on the east side of the state, south of Detroit. Went to school in Western Michigan University. My first job was estate taxes and planning. Was a stockbroker and insurance guy. Did that for a couple of years, and then joined the Marine Corps. Joined the Marine Corps 4 weeks after I joined, a couple weeks before, but I went into OCS 4 weeks after 9/11. So I was in the gym working, getting in shape for officer candidate school when 9/11 happened, and right away we realized that it was gonna be different. Things were gonna change. Went in, spent 7.5 years in the Marine Corps. I got a master's in Chinese energy policy, got a PhD in behavioral economics. Spent 4 years overseas, was in Fallujah in '04. We took the city by force, the second push to Fallujah. Got out. I've worked for several organizations. I was the Presidential Management Fellow for Treasury, did terrorism and financial intelligence, did small business administration and international trade. I went and became a diplomat foreign service guy with USAID. I went to Kabul and worked out of the embassy there for over a year. Got done with that, then worked for Army and ran the Senate Liaison Division as deputy chief, acting chief. Did that for a while. That was great times working up on the Hill, forward deployed. Got to know all the guys on the SASC and a whole bunch of staffers. That was a lot of fun. Went to work for the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. It was a new position under Secretary Mattis's days. And our first secretary was the undersecretary was Dr. Griffin. He had been the prior administrator to NASA. And so got to work as a civilian in the Army side, OSD side, went over and worked for the Air Force as a senior advisor to Will Roper for a while. And now I do some economic work, but for OSD, but I also have a think tank called the BIED Society. And then we have BIED Europe Security Institute, which does a lot of stuff over in Europe. And so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, really excited to be here, Albert. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, definitely. Crazy how small the world is. I now live in Indianapolis. I've been here 12 years now, so not too far down the road from you guys. I should spend more time in Michigan, but the governor annoys me. Yeah, and speaking of Apaches, Chelsea, so a lot of Apache pilots are my clients. So tell your husband, say, throw a rock over in Qatar and see if he hits any Apache folks that are my clients. I got more Apache pilots than I think almost anything else. It's crazy. But yeah, and Chelsea, you mentioned quartermaster and oh man, something else that you said. I'd like to say acquisitions, things like that. So you guys may not have seen, but we're all in the very same. I went through was in the Army in the infantry enlisted side, late 90s, and was in Germany, then got med boarded in 2000. And then 9/11 happened when I was in college. I tried to get back in a couple of different ways. Of course, the government said no, stupid. And then I just kept trying. I went down to Houston, applied for a warrant officer position to fly, and got told no there too, or kind of no. And I said, fuck it, I'm going to go take ownership of my own life. And so I went further down south, joined ROTC, and that was a slow, steady route. And that worked out nicely because I got picked up for medevac. So I was a medevac pilot I did Afghanistan in 09 and 10 was my long tour over there. So yeah, small world.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all here for a reason. Yeah. So Chelsea, how'd you get into what you're doing now? Machine shop, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yep. We kind of, so Dave's family has always been in the machine world. Like that's what both his parents do, and his brother-in-law, so he comes from like a machining background. He went to engineering school for his master's while he was still in the military. We kind of came into a situation where we were like, when we both got out, we were doing different jobs. I was selling the forklifts, which is kind of random. But we knew we wanted to go into business for ourselves, and we were looking for an opportunity, and we came across this business called Northern Castings that was for sale. And we just decided, like, it became an opportunity where we decided to purchase it, and we turned that into our first machine shop, which was called Sutton Machining. We moved that to Brunson, Michigan, and changed the name to Sutton Machining from Northern Castings to Sutton Machining, and took the book of business, expanded it. That became our first machine shop. Then we bought the current machine shop we're in now from Bob and Pat Smith. They wanted to retire. We met them, and through Sutton Machine, just doing mutual business with them. And this one's in Augusta, so we bought this one as well. And we're here in Augusta, so it's just closer to us. Brunson's about an hour away, so that was kind of a terrible commute every day. So we sold our half of Sutton Machine to Dave's brother. So they own Sutton Machine 100%, and then we own Smith Metal here in Augusta 100%. So now we just have this one here, and it's been good. We've had this one since 2019. We bought Sutton Machining in 2017. So we've been doing it for a couple of years now, and so far so good. But yeah, the timing on Smith Metal one was a little dicey because it was October 2019, so it was right before COVID. And so so we bought in 2019, right before COVID, and then we bought Smith Metal because they had this one customer that we really, really wanted. And we lost that customer in January of 2020. And then COVID hit, and I was like, this was a terrible idea, actually. And so, but it ended up being fine. It ended up working out. But it was at the time, I was like, we came home, like, I don't know, the end of January, and I was like, we might need to pick up a drinking habit or something.
Yeah.
But it ended up being fine.
You need a wall, shot skis on the wall or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But it ended up working out. We just it just ended up being kind of high adventure for a little bit.
How'd you guys get into I like the idea of buying out somebody's book of business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good business model. What inspired you guys to do that, or who led you, who mentored you, who guided you, if that was a better word?
I think it just ended up, I mean, we knew that that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to buy an existing business, but we were kind of like, we explored, like, we looked at like a lot. We probably explored like 20 different businesses. Like, we were looking at restaurants, and we crossed that off the list. It just looked like a lot of late nights, and we didn't want to do it. It didn't look conducive to our lifestyle. Then we looked at like a couple, like there was this one, if you've heard of Echo Valley, it's like a toboggan run place. It's only open in the winter. We looked at that. That was for sale. Basically, we were looking at any business that was for sale in our area. And we explored a lot of businesses that were for sale. We were like, could we do this? Then we were looking at storage spaces. We're like, could we do this for a business? Because it's like more passive income. We would have a lot more free time. I don't know. We like I said, we're just kind of, we knew we wanted to be entrepreneurs. We knew we wanted to be our own bosses. We just couldn't decide how to do it. So we ended up this is what we landed on.
Sounds good. Ken, I don't want to leave you hanging there, man. What's going on with you?
My wife went to Afghanistan with me when we were newly married. When we came back and we're cash flush and we're looking for, what the new job was going to be, what we are going to do. And we looked at all sorts of jobs, just like you, Chelsea. I mean, we looked at vineyards, but you got to have like 7 to 10 years worth of cash flow in order to float those things because you don't make a profit for a long time. And the thought was we would go underwater pretty quick. And so we looked at that. They were fun to explore. We were living in Loudoun County at the time, and they were popping up everywhere. But you need some really deep pockets. And so we looked at some other things. I had a bunch of machine shops when I was doing securities in estate planning in Michigan early on, over on the east side of the state. Everybody was tied to the big three auto manufacturers, as most of Detroit is. But when you get southwest and west, you start separating from the big three. Um, why did we decide on a nonprofit? I think what we learned when we were in Afghanistan was I was working on the PhD. One of the requirements my wife gave me. I'd kind of run out of juice on the PhD and was kind of sitting there on the shelf. And she's like, "Yeah, you can go to Afghanistan with two exceptions. One, you got to finish your PhD, and two, you got to take me with you. And as a Marine, you can't take your spouse to a war zone. That's not how it works. But the Foreign Service is entirely different. And so she had worked for 15 years in the DC area, working for the Ritz Carlton. And so she had worked for all four of the Ritz Carltons in DC, and she had worked all sorts of foreign delegations on US soils. And the Saudis would come and rent the whole hotel, or the French would come and rent a couple floors and do a conference. And so when we sent her resume to Kabul, we sent it to three different offices, and she got five different offers. And so we just had to wait for us to get married. As soon as we were married, then she went off to Foreign Service Institute to get spun up. You couldn't go into country until you had been through some training and some crash and bang and some other classes that they have. Which was, I mean, some of the coolest training I had was with Foreign Service Institute. I know that probably sounds odd, Albert, but we got to crash our cars into other cars and get off the X and learn how to do J turns and Y turns and things. And it was pretty cool. The shooting portion was pretty weak. They'd hand you a loaded weapon and you'd pull the trigger. That's about the foreign services side, but the driving portion was really, really cool. And I had been in country for several months before she got there. And then I had to agree to a 12-month tour once she got there. So I think altogether I was on the ground, boots to ground for 16 months, around 11, 12, and 13. And so it was a good time. When we got done, we were both ready for something new, and we shopped around and we're fishing for something. And the nonprofit, the lessons that we learned inside the Kabul, inside Afghanistan, was that the Foreign Service apparatus, the State Department, the diplomats, the Defense Department, which is DoD, and the international development community, were all three not working very well together. They weren't talking. They were doing their own thing. I remember one morning I went to a meeting in the morning. They said, we're going to bring all the schools inside the green zone, and we're going to make sure they're all protected, and we're going to protect all the schools. And then at lunchtime I went to a meeting that said, we, the US, are going to support keeping all the schools where they're at, so that everyone's where they're at and they're close to home, and we're not forcing anyone to do long transient times. And then the afternoon, it was, we're going to create some hubs, and we're going to require everyone to move. And that's when the light bulb went on. And defense, diplomacy, and development, none of them were talking. They were not communicating. This is after being in country for 11, 12 years already. You thought that there would be a lot more interaction. And in one day, it proved that we had three entirely different plans, than that every one of the foreign service apparatus inside the US government was on a different page. Of course, that created a lot of problems. And so we thought about putting together a think tank that would get those three communities together, um, and they could work and get to better understand why defense makes decisions, why the State Department doesn't, why USAID is very arm's length against the DoD. There's patterns, and you see them, but understanding why they have those patterns, and the fact that when you're USAID and you're in Africa somewhere in a third world country, and you don't want to be seen as an intel or a defense person, and so they keep their arm's length because they're kind of at the whim of the local warlord. There's not a lot of protection, and so they make sure that people know where they stand. It took a long time to learn some of those lessons, but the think tank now tries to get those three together. At first, we thought we were going to attract a lot of undergraduates, graduate students, but because all of us that started the organization were kind of mid-career, had been around 20, 30 years, we had a lot of mid-career folks saying, hey, I'm a motor T officer and I want to go to be a diplomat. How do I do that? How do I translate this career into this career? And so we worked on a lot of career transition, primarily for a lot of military folks. It wasn't until COVID came when we started getting back to the undergraduate and the graduate students. When COVID came, you couldn't get into the CIA and the State Department and the Department of Defense and Congress because everyone was shutting the stuff down and everyone was working from home. But the number of students was still pretty high. You still had countries, people from all over the country that wanted to do internships, that needed internships to graduate. And so I had years ago when I started the company in 14, I was a professor at George Washington University, and I had set this up a couple different places. It was a 100% virtual internship for national security and a 100% virtual internship for international affairs. And folks found me during COVID and was like, can you take 2 students, 4 students, 8, 6, 12, 32, 64? We averaged 97 full-time employees in 20 and 21. And at that time, we weren't making money on any of those, but we were doing it because we were trying to fill the void, right? The market needed the students to do something, and so we got a bunch of folks. At that time is when we transitioned from an LLC to a nonprofit to a 501c3, and that's when we started opening up policy centers. So we started space policy and defense innovation, and the regional policy centers to help folks better understand the different options that they had available to them. So yeah, it was an interesting time, but that's kind of what got us into this. And now things are going pretty good and we're having a lot of fun. So
Sounds good. So that was pretty long. So let me turn it back over to Chelsea. That was long, but I like the setup. So let's talk about future state. So what's happening in the next like five or 10 years that you guys know about?
Oh, what for us, we're planning on buying more equipment and getting more people, but that's the biggest challenge that I think we're facing is just the people in our industry. It's hard to find skilled labor. So we're I think trying to grow our own. Basically, we have to train people and bring them in, train them up, and get them in the machines or on the machines. And I think that's I think not industry specific. I think that's going to be like skilled labor is going to be hard to find going forward in any profession in the U.S. right now. So I don't think that's just for machining. I think that's probably like, electricians, plumbers. I think that's going to be an ongoing problem in the trades. I mean, you see it in the high school. They took out all the trades, but I think it's coming back. I think that we're moving in a positive direction. We've got some of us coming back to the high schools that I see now. So I think we're moving in a positive direction. So hopefully that continues and kids start seeing it being a value again, or it's being valued again in the U.S. So we hired some newer, younger guys in our shop, and they're working out great. And like I said, we're just kind of have come to the realization that we're gonna have to start growing around and training them ourselves if we're gonna get the people that we want them to stay with us. So we just try to we really value our employees and want them to stay with us. So we're just expanding. Like we try our business model is we try to be a one-stop shop. We want customers to come to us and be able to do everything under one roof. Besides, we're never planning on heat treating here or doing coatings here. So basically everything else we want to be able to do under one roof as much as possible. So I think we're probably going to get some more. We have right now 4 Swiss machines. We'll probably get some more in just because one machinist can run several Swiss machines. They just kind of set up and run. But that has been a hiring sticking point. It's really hard to find a Swiss machinist. So that has been an issue. We have one guy right now. So if we could hire, we would hire at least 2 more Swiss machinists like yesterday, if we could find them. So
so what do you guys make? You said you want to be a one-stop shop. I think even Ken was asking that too. What's your ideal client?
Oh, we make everything. We service a lot of different industries. Automotive, we do automotive. But that was our biggest takeaway from COVID was that we can't be automotive dependent because when they shut down, everybody shuts down. So we try to stay diverse, not just with customers. Like we don't depend on one customer. We stay market diverse as well. So we service the food industry. We do a lot for food manufacturers. We do a lot for automotive. We do a lot for the medical industry. We do some aerospace, but not a lot, just because we're not. We don't have the AS. I forget what it is, but we don't have that certification that you need right now. We're just ISO 9001. So if we wanted to go more into aerospace, we'd have to get some different certification for that, which we haven't really gotten into. Right now we are working on, I just had the paperwork on my desk, but I moved it for this, but we are getting into some government contracting as well, just because Dave and I are both veterans. Dave's a service disabled veteran. So I think we're going to start hitting up some government contracts as well, as soon as we got to get our CMMC level 1 certification squared away, and then we're going to work on doing some government contracting as well. But yeah, we're a contract manufacturer, so everybody sends us a widget and we make it. So send us a print, we'll make it.
Nice. And Ken, you said you were out of DC for a while. Are you still out of DC, or are you back in Michigan?
No, I haven't been to Michigan, and we're hoping to make a trip to Mackinac Island next summer with the family. Got an 8-year-old daughter, and when we started dating, I took my wife there. So my mom and dad are still there, and my sister and a bunch of family. But no, yeah, we're DC. We go to Florida a lot. I got a twin brother that's in Texas,
Cool.
so we shoot out to Texas frequently. But I need to get back to Michigan more often than we do. There's some fun places there, Frankenmuth and Traverse City and some other places that are always a good time. But I think next summer we've got plans to do the Mackinac trip, which, Albert, if you haven't ever been, it's a island that doesn't allow cars, and so you get picked up from the port by horse-drawn buggy, and you can. It's like 8 miles around. You can walk, you can ride horses, you can rent a bike, and
Do the
they got
double button.
lawns. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a fun little place. Everyone in Michigan knows it, but it's fun. It's right where the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula meet. Mackinac Bridge is here, and then the island's just a mile away from that.
That's where
But
Dave and I did our honeymoon.
say again.
That's where Dave and I did our honeymoon. Was
Did you
Mackinac
really?
Oh,
Island.
do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, check that out, because I feel like I haven't. It's so weird. I've been here 12 years, and I've set foot in Michigan, but it was like on the low end, and it was maybe only once. And but yeah, I need to put more effort and energy into that. So, and I grew up on a cattle ranch, so yeah, I'm used to horses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that I can do that I haven't even, I would say, thought of doing in a decade or more now. So it'd be nice to take I have 5 kids, by the way. So it'd be nice to take the family up there and do something. So I'm definitely going to poke on you guys. Be like, hey, what should I do? Where should I take them? That sounds like a good place.
There's a big island. I think it's a national park called Isle Royal.
Mm-hmm.
It's over on the Lake Michigan side, and that's a great place to just take the kids. It's full of nature. Go camping and see, huge moose that are massive and things along those lines. But the island, it's got a bunch of bed and breakfast, kind of old Victorian kind of style. There's a big hotel there called the Grand Hotel. It sits up there. There's a fort that it was a big deal in the War of 1812. And so there was a battle or two fought up there. And then you got the Mackinac Bridge, which used to be the longest suspension bridge. You can sit on the front porch of the hotel and look at the big bridge and see all the water and the ice float by if you're there in the wintertime. It usually closes down most of the winter, and then it opens back up for the second half of December, where the guys will drive their snowmobiles across the ice to get to the bridge. I've never done that, Chelsea. I'm not. I'm a risk taker, but I like the ferry getting me there. I've never taken the snowmobile to the island, but I know a lot of people who have.
No, I've never gone to Mackinac Island in the winter. I don't want any part of that.
No snowmobile for Chelsea. Okay. Yeah. You got snowmobile insurance?
Nope.
Life insurance update?
there's always cars that will fall through the ice. People will try to do it, and it's not. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But yeah, the Mackinac is fun. Yeah, DC, spent a long time in DC. Spent a long time as a foreign service guy and being part of the Marine Corps. I've visited 77 countries, so this has spent a lot of time outside of the United States. And now that we're doing the think tank is all about focusing on career development for international affairs students in the soft sciences. So you've got criminal justice, regional studies, you've got political science, you've got all your soft sciences. What they've basically done to kind of pitch you on how we're growing, the medical field and the legal field are doing really good at teaching their students what the expectations are. They usually self-diagnose early. I'm going to be pre-med or pre-law. They go to undergraduate school. That's just a check in the box for them. They're going to get a good GPA in order to go to graduate school. They go on. They go to law school. They go to medical school. They get their degree, but no one's looking for a day one doctor. No one's looking for a day one attorney, right? Everyone wants someone that's been around and is salty. And so they have taught their students that they need to specialize, even after having a terminal degree, even after being a doctor, the medical field and the attorney field. They know that it's going to take 7 to 10 years to earn a specialization from their peers and from the community. But once they have that specialization, they can charge pretty good money, and the market's happy to give them a higher paycheck to do those things. What we found in the soft sciences, your philosophies and your criminal justice and your political science, these students have been taught, oh, just be a generalist, just be a generalist. Well, every year you have new classes that are teaching the same things, and if you only know what they know and you're not adding new things to your skills, then you're going to stay in the $50,000 to $70,000 community forever. And we got a lot of people that do that. And they don't understand why. When you specialize and you start bringing a new language, time and country, understanding a policy issue better than anybody else, and you've done it for a couple of years, now you can really make some good money being a specialist, but you have to roll up your sleeves and decide what you want to specialize in. And we get students right at that cusp where they've been in the workforce for a few years. Maybe they've gone to graduate school. They're thinking about graduate school. They're done with undergraduate school. They've dipped their toe in the working force, and they're like, "Boy, this isn't what I was told the job what the job community was. I don't feel like I'm making progress." And we bring them on board, and we get them if they can see the light of earning a specialty. They roll up their sleeves and then they specialize in what they want to specialize in, and we give them an opportunity to publish 3 times in 1 year. So they're starting to show the community of what their expertise is. I want to be a Ukrainian energy specialist, and if they spend a couple of years with us, they'll write a lot of papers. They'll get good at American Psychological Association, which is the soft science standard, unlike MLA or Chicago style. We do a spring concert or a spring conference in the spring in DC and a fall conference. We used to do international conferences on cruise ships, which were a lot of fun. But since COVID, there's a lot of concern about going on cruise ships, and some people aren't super excited about doing that yet. So we have stayed clear of the cruise ships since 2000. But for about 7 years, we spent a lot of time on cruise ships, doing conferences on cruise ships, and they were fun. Everyone that's interested in international affairs, they all want to get stamps in their passport and see more places. And so we spent a lot of time doing the Baltic Seas or Northern Mediterranean, or the cheaper ones are always in the Caribbean. But people like to go and get stamps in their passport and see those things. And so,
That's cool.
yeah, those are all fun things.
Yeah, it's cool. It's funny that isn't it funny how we're in the military, especially. So I was a consultant my last couple of years, and I went to Afghanistan on orders. It's just me and one other guy, and I was a captain. He was E7. And it was like, okay, you two chuckleheads, make it over there in this time frame, do your thing, be there 2 weeks, then come back. Do you know how cool that is? Talk about small unit tactics, and what was even cooler about that was the exact same fob that I was in 2 years prior to that, and just it was crazy. Small world, being able to see a classmate of mine was the medevac leader out there at the time, and it's such a small world when you actually do get out there. But my point to that is, then when you leave, like I've got a passport now, no stamps. I haven't even been in northern Michigan or even deep into Michigan, and it's like right there. So it's weird. It's so weird. So I'm glad that you're doing things that I like. I'm the same kind of guy, like expand your mind, go do cool things, go do cool stuff. I did start doing, let's see, last year we had a young lady from Spain. The year before that, we had a young lady from Switzerland. And that was a lot of fun for a foreign exchange program.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody out there, I highly recommend that. And that'll open your mind up because those kiddos they're good kids. They're raised by good family and stuff like that. So it's an expensive endeavor, and their parents have to pay for a lot of stuff. And but yeah, that's a blast. So anything that opens your mind up, because I think just too much right now is that our generations have been told to just, well, like you said, be in this little bee box, be in this cubicle, and we'll feed you some shit every now and then to help you grow. That's about it. So I like that you guys are just such entrepreneurial, and how can I help something that's bigger than myself? And that's the people I'm wanting to reach. That's why we're talking today. So I appreciate both you guys doing that. I want to tee up Ken, but I'm going to go back to Chelsea because Ken, I'm curious to see where you're going. So put a pin in it for now. Chelsea, what else are you thinking from what Ken and I were chatting on there?
Quick question, Albert. You had 2 foreign exchange students? Because my husband and I keep kicking the idea of doing it, like, because our kids in high school. So we're like, maybe we should do that. Because I had a foreign exchange student in high school, and he, like, basically we joke about it. He never left. He was a German foreign exchange student, and he went back home for a year, but then he did college in the U.S. and now he lives here in the U.S. Like, he came back here as an adult and like works for a U.S. company and has like a visa and stayed here. Like, we always like laugh about it because we're like, we call him our German brother, and basically like never left. And we're like, he ended up being like a lifelong friend. So like we keep talking about for Jack, we're like, we should do it. We should get a German. We should do a, not German, doesn't matter. But we're like, we should do a foreign exchange student. So you would recommend it?
Yeah, and it's I know Ken said that he had a young person from Italy. So that what's nice too is that, especially these days, or at least here in Indiana, that the school has like one organization they work with, and they really, I forget what it's called, like Flag or something like this. But anyhow, and I'm not gonna say that they do all the things for you, but when you have the general idea, then you go, okay, let me get more specified, like Ken was talking about a couple seconds ago, that just what do I want to do? What do I want to aim for? Thankfully, it sounds creepy, but thankfully these days are like online, so you get to see them and see what their passions are, see where they are in the pecking order of their family. Do they have younger sisters, older brothers, whatever? Because again, they're a family of 5, so oh my gosh, I call her Swister, which is hilarious. But so Swister, she's a fireball, and she came here at 16, turning 17, and man, she comes from Switzerland, so of course her dad's in money. Her parents are divorced, but it's like her dad is in money, is CFO of some giant company, and her mom and stepdad are in the wine business and own a winery and stuff. So again, small world talking about wineries, but yeah, they're voted high on the winery list or whatever. So I don't know all the language, but but it was such a blast with them. And then the Spanish young lady, she was from Majorca, Spain, which is the island, and her parents are both attorneys. And so she was 15, turned 16 here, and yeah, it was just so much fun. They're here about 9 months. Swister came back over 4th of July this year, and I was unfortunately in Florida doing some work stuff, and I missed her. But oh my gosh, it opens up our kids to other opportunities and other thoughts, and so my son, who just started his freshman year of college, he's double majoring right now in psychology and Spanish, and he has his passport, and we're going to talk about through my military benefits and stuff of sending him to do a year abroad or a semester abroad or something like that, sophomore year. So all kinds of cool stuff. That's what's nice about being a veteran. It really opens you up to like, holy shit, I went to small town, whatever. I'm from small town, or even if you're from big city, you've never seen the green rolling hills of Germany. You've never seen when you see the Alps for the first time, when you're driving and you go, fuck, that's tall.
Mhm.
It's a life changer. When you take a oh my gosh, I was 18 and we did, I'm love to hear you guys' story, but when I was 18, we, yeah, 18, took a bus, went to Munich for Oktoberfest. Crazy. And I mean, I was late 90s, so it wasn't too crazy. But I was in Innsbruck, Austria for the New Year's Millennium. Oh God, that was a blast. And everybody over there dances a waltz. So I thankfully knew what that meant, and I was able to do it. So, oh man, it's so much fun. But yeah, that's the stuff. That's what we need to do. I feel like a lot of times, us veterans, we get so beat down by the whatever the grind is, whatever it is, the grind of life, and then you look back and go, "Fuck, man, that was 10 years ago that I did. I was in flight school. I don't want to do the math, but like, not 20 years, but pretty fucking close. It's weird, and
It goes fast.
it didn't feel like it. Yeah, I know Ken. He's got the not much hair on top and gray, and the one thing you can't buy back is time. So I think us older folks would say, man, take advantage as much as you can when you can, and just know that that's where you need to be at that time. And I think the American, I won't say dream, because the American dream is bigger, but the American society unfortunately has allowed this whole global bullshit to be like, well, you belong in this box. That's where you need to be. We'll pay you $70,000-$80,000 a year to shut the hell up and not do anything. Just not do anything for yourself. And then that's so shameful, because we're here to our Father wants us to be abundant, and He's happiest when we're helping others and bringing joy to others. And you can't bring joy to others if you're in some little big fucking cubicle for 8 hours a day and miserable. So that's why I'm here too. Help everybody listening get out of your little bubble and go do cool shit. So if we can do it, you can do it too.
I think we need to do the European summers where we take off don't they take like 2 months off in the summer?
Oh my God.
Or like is it a month? I don't know.
I'm with you. And when you're over in like Italy and Spain, you understand why they do the siesta and all that kind of stuff, because they're with their family all day. They work hard and play hard. Family is just so big over there, and that's why I've got a big family and I like to cook and stuff. And I think I'm making up for things I didn't have growing up, and I've lost a lot of family members and things like that, and wasn't raised around family. And I've got a lot of family, but I wasn't raised around them, so it's like I'm having to make up for lost time. So that's what I'm focusing on too.
Yeah.
Ken, what was your experience with Italian?
He was an exchange student with a buddy of mine. He was an attorney in the Marine Corps with me, and he called up and said, "Hey, I've got an exchange student. He stayed with me this year. He's going to be here for the summer. You got space for him?" I go, "Yeah, we got." So he came down and spent a couple months with us. We had him for the summer, so he wasn't technically a student when he was with us. So he was just wanting to run around and play and see stuff. And we were in DC and he wanted to get plugged in. So, I mean, we take him to all the monuments and, took him on the metro and the Arlington National Cemetery, all the cool stuff. So you got pictures of all the neat places, but he, just a great guy. We're still in touch with him. I just saw him the other day, on Zoom. But he went on and got a degree in economics, and that's what my degree was in. So I don't know, we caught him in the cultivating years. I don't know if meeting us, affected, his career choice or whatever, but he went on and just kept going to school and got his PhD, and he's doing great things. And I would highly recommend it, Chelsea. I think it's an eye opener. It's great for the kids. It opens up. It creates another family member.
Mhm.
If it goes right, if they go back home or if they stay, either way. But yeah, we highly recommend it. Um, I think it's interesting to see. I'm a big fan of the siesta, but I spend a lot of time in the math and the sciences. I do a lot of work with trying to get STEM and increasing STEM, and
Mhm.
so science, math, technology, uh, and engineering. And there's a bunch of reasons why we don't do very well at STEM, but we're not doing good at math and science. So it's we're not doing well across the board. And if you look at the other schools, you go and you look at Japan, you look at Germany, all the schools that are doing really well right now, I think we're 26 out of 28th in math and science. Like it's really bad. In post-industrialized societies, we are not doing well at teaching ourselves. And there's reasons for that. But if you look at what they have chosen to do with their schools, is they're all going to school year round. Why is the US still on the agrarian calendar? How many people do you know race home for the summertime to help dad and grandpa, bring in the crops? Nobody does that anymore, but we're still on the let's take 3 months off and do the whole thing. And the school teachers are excited about having their summers off. And the problem with that though is if you lose 2 or 3 months a year in math and science over 12 years, you're 3 years behind in math and science. And we keep looking at it going, well, gosh, I wonder why they're so far ahead. It's not rocket. All the science is there. We'll show you what's going on, but we are choosing to hold on to an archaic system. When you go over to Europe, a lot of times, they'll take 2 weeks in the spring, 2 weeks in the fall. They still have time off, but it's spread out over the course of the year. It's not one time frame. And then you get 2 weeks to go skiing in the Alps. You get 2 weeks to go swimming in the lakes. Not 2 months, but 2 weeks. But it's still enough to do your summer holiday and do your winter holiday, do your spring holiday. So I'm kind of mixed when it comes to that, but I do think we need to pay a little more attention to what's going on with math and science. And then obviously it gets a little more complex when you talk about how to increase women in engineering and science and technology. But there's a couple of technologies right now. I mean, space right now is pendulum from, it's not government dominated anymore. NASA does not have control. It's moved over to the private sector. You got SpaceX and Blue Origin, all these other space companies. They're doing it 1,000 times cheaper, 2,000 times cheaper. They're reusing things, they're finding things. But from a policy perspective, boy, it's the Wild West. I mean, there's not a lot of policy in there because the private sector has just recently taken it up. And if when we talk about your industry, Chelsea, from a defense perspective, it used to be you had to have parts, they had to be built, you had to know where the planes were going. Nowadays, you can put a printer in the back of a plane and print whatever parts you need, to a certain degree, print certain parts, and you've got as many parts as you need. And that changes how you move and go and the logistics and how you can plan. You just print the part you need and plug it into play and move on. It's really the market technology is changing the marketplace so crazy. It's fun and it's a little scary to pay attention to how they say right now from an academic perspective, in 10 years, 70% of the jobs will be entirely different.
Well,
That's
and with
probably
AI too.
with AI is the big changer, yeah. But I would argue, the core job, you're still going to need people to sell. You're still going to need engineers to like solve problems. You're still going to need admin. You're still going to need HR. Like there's still jobs that are going to be the same. One of the questions in academia is right now, who's going to be better in 10 years? Is the person who's a really exceptional writer, are they going to be the sought after person? Or is the person that understands the algorithms inside the AI and can say, write me a 10-page article in American Psychological Association format. I want the voice of, Marshall Thurgood, whatever, and they understand the inputs that their product is actually more persuasive or articulate than the writer. Could we get there? Yeah, you probably could. And so who's going to be the more sought after person? The person that enters the stuff and gets a good product, or the person that actually gets it? I don't know. It's interesting to think about and play with those ideas because we're all going to have a front row seat and watch it happen.
Right. Is it the piano player or the pianist? Right. Or the piano, do you
Yes.
consider it an instrument or the computer, I mean, I don't know. The 3D printer and the parts, it better be better than our 3D printer. Ours, sometimes it works great, and then sometimes it makes a mess and blows itself up. So,
Yep.
We just had it.
Always get what you pay for.
Well, it's a high end one, and every once in a while, like we'll do prints overnight. Like the longer prints, we'll set it up and leave for the day, and it's supposed to print overnight. And it'll do this thing where it floods it. It's supposed to like have a sensor where it'll turn itself off if it's having a problem. And no, it'll flood the head and it'll tear itself apart and literally tear the wires out. And then we have to rewire it. And it's not supposed to do that. And it has like all these little like sensors, and it has like literally a little camera where it'll send its error to us and like be like, help me. And like It just doesn't do it. They'll just like literally tear itself apart. And I'm like, why would you do this to yourself? And it's literally like one of the more expensive, nicer ones on the market, and it'll print metal. So I'm like, it's not there yet. You know what I mean? Like you think it is, but it's not.
So speaking of like future stuff, so I didn't mention this, so I'm going to be more helpful with this. So since I was a helicopter pilot and I was on the board of the Combat Helicopter Pilot Association for 2 tours, I was asked by HAI, the Helicopter Association, Helicopter Association International. They host the biggest, largest heli expo in the world, so the American Heli Expo, and so their headquarters out of DC, and they asked me to be part of their think tank that they called Heli Future, so the future of helicopter industry. And so tons of my clients, again, Apache guys are mine. Oh my gosh. I've got just in this week, I was in a meeting with a client of mine who's a Blue Angel, or was a Blue Angel. I'm mostly, even though I've got a lot of fighter pilots and airline pilots, most of my world is like three 1/60th drone guys are mine. All kinds of, oh my gosh, all the secret dudes that are out there, those guys are mine. And air crews, ground crews, all that kind of stuff. The guys in Costa Rica doing drug interdiction, those guys are mine. Border Patrol, mine. So even the new president of HAI, he's not my client, but what do you call a guy that you own an airplane with? His airplane in-law or whatever. His best buddy is mine. So you never know. But like I used to, when COVID ended, I would go to a bunch of conventions. So I went to AUSA in DC, other mini stuff like mini AUSA. I haven't been to that yet out in Alabama, but I've been go to Nashville. I'll go down to Florida a couple times a year, Destin, stuff like that, Tampa, and hang out with those guys. So if you ever want to see a bunch of Ninja Turtles roaming around, go to Tampa every May. There'll be dudes that are nothing but little muscle balls roaming around, and that's good fun to go see. But there's so much more now with the drone stuff. Like with the former president of HAI, he had been around for 20 something years as president. He just was, I think, too much. I'm sitting on my throne kind of thing. I don't know him personally, so I'm trying to attack on him. I'm just saying sometimes people just get in their head of like old school shit. Oh, I'm the president, so therefore bow down to me kind of crap. I'm not saying that was him, but now there's a new president, and you're seeing a hell of a lot more of drone activity everywhere. So my point back to both of you, and I want to hand this baton over to you guys, is I think we're at the beginning wave of the American dream coming back, of like industry, getting out there, getting your fingers calloused up and your back hurting at the end of every day because you're working your ass off doing something that's valuable, tangible. Like I said, I worked on a cattle ranch, or grew up on a cattle ranch. My dad was a horseshoer, blacksmith, all that kind of stuff. So if you want a bad back, follow one of those dudes around. You want an internship that you probably aren't going to make it through, go follow a blacksmith. And my dad was one of the best in the nation, and he was his own enemy. He didn't go teach later in life and all that kind of stuff, and he passed away a couple of years ago. So, anyway, my point to that being, like, I think we're on the cusp of a new revolution, industrial revolution, and I don't think AI is either A, artificial, or I, intelligent. I ask Alexa, she'll say it's going to rain today, and I ask, okay, what time is it going to rain today? And she doesn't know. It's these AIs, all they do is they make things a little easier, but they also make things a little more difficult. You're like, oh fuck, now I got to check my weather app now to find out when the fuck it's going to rain because it's hot outside. I want my windows down on my Jeep. So are they making life easier? I mean, God, guys, go with me on this. How much do you think this thing cost? $700. If I said 700, you guys would be like, yeah, okay. I was talking to my mom the other day. I was born in 1980. So I grew up on a cattle ranch. I know how to ride horses. I know what a rotary phone is. I know what long distance phone calls are. If you could somehow zap your, I don't know, have a chat with your granddad or great granddad or something and be like, this is so nice. I get to carry it everywhere. It's a moneymaker. It is. It's got all kinds of shit on it. And what also tracks the fuck out of me, it takes pictures of me without me knowing about it. They sell my information to everybody, and millions of people are making money off of me without me knowing about it or giving them any kind of ability to do it. And but you guys used to have long distance phone calls that would cost you a lot of money, $10 cents more per minute. And it just like, you remember the old days where you look at you guys probably do this when you look at the old phone bill and your parents get pissed off, like, what the fuck? And Chelsea, I know you're probably one of the phone talkers. You're like, oh, yeah, that kind of. And parents look at your phone bill and be like, what the hell? Now you look at your own phone and phone bill and go, oh my God. Oh my God. It's like a business in and of itself. So we're entrepreneurial, so we're making it make money for us. I get it. But other people out there, it's a suck. So anyway, thoughts on the industrial revolution of the next wave?
Chelsea, I'll let you go. I got all sorts of thoughts.
We're already like an hour in, so we're gonna go woo even faster now with this idea.
Well, like we play around with ChatGBT every once in a while with writing programs. And initially, like when the first version came out, it couldn't do it. It was pretty clunky. But now the 4.0 version, it can write programs for pretty complex parts. And so that's crazy to me because it kind of takes away like someone's full job. Like we have a whole guy that does his whole job is he does the programming for the shop. And then our guys, like most of the guys can do their programming at the machine. But like that would take away a lot of time for us and save us a lot of time. And we still do it. Like we don't really rely on it yet, but it's getting there. So that's crazy to me. And that was just what was ChatGPT released like a year ago. And it's learning so fast. And if you talk with it, which like I do, it's night and day difference from when it first came out to now, like the conversations you can have with it, how much like it now can do current events, whereas it used to only do like up to like its knowledge base was on to like 2000, like I think it was like 19 or something. And now it's like current event. It can talk to you about current events. So it's really creepy. So I don't know. I think that it is the wave of the future. And I think that you're going to have to, I think everybody's going to be on board with using it. And it's just, I think it'll be something that will be integrated into your daily life is my guess. You'll have an AI assistant is the way I see it going. And it'll be kind of curtailed to each person. I think you'll have like a little personality person that like assists you is the way I see it going. In the kinder way I see it, or it could be really dark. I don't know. Or it's going to be like Skynet. Who knows?
Somewhere between the best and the worst thing ever. Mm-hmm. Somewhere there.
The Jetsons. The Jetsons. And do you guys remember the Jetsons?
Yes. Yeah. The Jetsons are Skynet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about, we got an initiative of the think tank that I think you guys will be interested, especially you, Albert, but in your community. But those sorts of things. I sit. We do a lot. We did a whole conference on AI a couple months. I think it was spring of last year. And I'm not the AI guy, but when you talk, you bring in all PhDs and they start talking about all the different things. You learn a lot just by sitting around and having what's so much fun being the guy at the top is, I get to keep my finger on the pulse of space policy. Love space policy. It's absolutely interesting as an economist to watch it go from the government to the private sector. That hasn't happened that many times in the last 200 years. And we got a front row seat. We're watching it happen and it's moving so fast and there's so much going on that it's really exciting to watch it and to be a part of it. You look at other things, you look at AI, right? There's a whole bunch of ethical things, right? It's a two-edged sword. It can help you, it can hurt you. How are you going to manage it? What are you going to do? Who's going to be able to see it? Who can proofread it? Every time you keep things secret, there's issues. What is freedom of speech? What's freedom? Who gets to charge for it? Someone had a piece of art. They used an AI program, and the art that they created won some big $1 million prize. Did you guys see that? Well, now the AI manufacturer. Well, hey, that's ours. That's our our AI created that, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
time out, and I gave it the inputs. So it's creating this whole new layer of what is the law, where it's from a policy perspective, it's incredibly interesting.
Mhm.
But the big initiative for us right now, we've got three initiatives when we go to the fall. We did AI a year ago, and some folks from the Hill said, "Why don't you come and present some stuff to the Hill?" And so we did that in the spring, and now we've been asked to come back, and we're going to speak to the House Oversight Committee in the fall. So when we come to our conference, it's a congressional conference on November 15th, 16th, and 17th. We're going to go to the Hill. We're going to present some of our stuff, but what we're coming across and what we're learning in the military community, specifically on brain injury and suicide prevention, is that really 10, 15 years, the last three administrations, so President Obama and President Trump and President Biden have all um, provided money towards veteran suicide prevention. The majority of that much money has really gone, it's about $1.5 billion, has gone towards psychiatry, right? So we've asked a lot of people to do a lot of things. They've seen a lot of things. They've done a lot of things. Some of these guys and girls have been to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 deployments over the 20 years. And the thought was that they've learned how to suppress their feelings, and they have to learn how to have a safety valve to relieve the pressure. And so that's kind of been the guiding force for the last 15 years. What we're finding when you look at the science of not psychiatry, but of brain injuries, is that there's a lot more brain injuries out there that we're aware of, to the tune of, we really think now it's a hardware problem. We think the reason, and the numbers have not dropped. All that money has gone in to try to help suicide prevention, and we're still hovering around 20, 22 a day. In fact, I think numbers for females went dramatically up after COVID. Um, and so if you look at brain injuries and kind of look at the community, what we're finding is a certain percentage of people come into, the military attracts a very healthy population. They play sports, they play college sports, they play football, women play soccer. You got lacrosse these days, you've got a lot of rugby. There's sports where you can bang your head quite a few times and during the developmental years. And so
Mhm.
if you hit your head a couple times, you still function, you can still move around. So everyone looks the other way and says, "Hey, you're good." But are you? And we're finding that those small hits can cause problems or breaks in the connectivity between the normal function. You look at we were we were promoting some stuff, and the Secretary of Defense, let's see, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness. It's the Honorable Kathleen Hicks. She just came out on August 8th with a new policy to protect some of the enlisted folks who do the trainings. If you sit there and you throw grenades for 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and you're an E4 and E5, you're around a lot of blast. And so what we're learning is a lot of small blasts can be just as harmful, if not more harmful, than a Humvee rollover. And so, how about the young E5 that lays next to the machine gun for 3 years? That's a lot of small little repercussions. We know that artillery and tanks, right? We know that those have consistent problems with folks. But what about the engineers that are throwing, det cord and blowing things up on a regular basis? Those can be some pretty large blasts. So they just came out with some policy to change some stuff and to protect some folks, primarily on the enlisted side, not exclusively, but the lion's share is the trainers, and a lot of the trainers come from the enlisted side. So we were super excited to see that. But there's a big, we're trying to encourage the changing of kind of where the money flows. The science is showing that things like mold, access to mold. We've all been in the military, we've all been to bases, and we've seen really, really moldy places. Mold is like when you talk to the doctors that have the database, they're seeing the science and they're watching their database grow. It's like a frog that's boiling in water. You come in and you have a rash, you have your lung, maybe you're having problems breathing, right? You know there's something wrong, but you stay there because it's the free room, and that's part of your benefit package, is that you don't have to pay for your mortgage, right? So you stay in the free place. But there's mold all through the heating and cooling ducts. There's mold behind the couches and under the carpets, and your brain is only so big, and so your brain swells, and small parts of your brain basically get choked out. And the MRIs that we have nowadays can really, we've come a long way in the last, dozen years in MRIs, and they can see full blown, nickel, dime, quarter spots, $half spots on your brain that are shut off. There's no functioning avenue there. And so you can tell that you've got a brain injury. We've come a really long way there. And so what we were trying to do is we're trying to encourage more testing so that as I see it going forward, when you come into the military, you're going to start getting tests to see if you came into the military. We could have a large number of people coming into the military with, sports injuries. How about trainings like buds, where they're doing very, very physical things? Are some of the things that we're doing causing brain injuries? It's possible, probably likely, but we're not testing for it, so you don't know, right? And then we have two entirely different communities. You've got your military community that's currently wearing a uniform, and your VA community. Well, the VA is spun by an entirely different set of economic principles, and so do they have enough after 20 years of war, after fighting war in Iraq and Afghanistan? Do they have enough money to solve all the problems they currently have? I think collectively in the community, we all agree they don't. But what if we start finding new problems? And we're finding problems. It'll be a decade or two before some of those problems might be addressed, right? I was sick as a dog when I was in Lejeune, and somehow the miraculous date for Lejeune was 1988. Well, we were in a condemned building. We were drinking water from the water fountain that hadn't had a filter changed in 30 years in a condemned building. I was sick as a dog when I left there. Within 2 months of leaving, all of my symbols and numbers and blood labs got better when I left. We know it was environmental. But the mystical, 1988 number right now is what we're using for Lejeune. Why? Where did that number come from? Everything got fixed in 88 and there's no, right? So there's incentives that are coming on and putting pressures on things. And we've got some real neat things. We've made some progress. It looks like we're going to do a documentary. Really excited about that. I'd love to talk about that. We've got the conference coming up. We're going to talk to the Hill and kind of show them the science. And so that's really exciting. And hopefully we can kind of change some of the initiative and maybe reduce some of the suicides. And we all collectively want to do that. But we're raising money for the think tank so that we can do more studies. We're also working on artificial intelligence to help us triage. If we were to go to Lejeune and say, hey, here's 35,000 people, but you only have enough money to test 2,000 people, where would you start with? Well, we've got a whole bunch of things that are flags, right? These MOSs are big flags. These sports are big flags. What about if you had Lyme disease or now you got COVID? And there's, some of those things are showing that they're concerned, prolonged COVID, these sorts of things. Are those going to be big flags? But the AI, the artificial intelligence, can look through that data obviously a lot quicker and start seeing patterns way faster than we can start seeing them. So that if we only had enough money to say triage 35,000 people, you could say these 2,000 are the most exposed. Let's go and treat those first. Those are some things that we're working on, I think, are fun things to talk about. Hopefully we'll be able to help out some veterans, both uniform and VA folks. So
super cool. Yeah. I like the idea of privatizing. Like you talked about NASA now going over SpaceX as civilian side. Oh God, so nice. Get away from the. I hope Dan Bongino makes it up the chain pretty fast. Get a cabinet spot. Hope to also, hell, even myself be one of those guys that they go, Albert, you need to be in charge of the VA, because I guarantee you, Dan Bongino and other people out there that are educators and because when the government gets a hold of things like mortgages and student loans, well, it sucks. And I'm not the economist in the room, so I'll lean on Ken to you already saw the head nod.
I'll concur. You bet.
But I mean,
doesn't Boeing have two astronauts stuck in space right now though? Is that Boeing?
They do.
And they're not going to get out of there until like what? They're supposed to be up there for like what? Like it's supposed to be like a 2-week mission or something, and now they're not going to be home until February or something.
Oh my gosh.
If I were them, I'd be losing my mind.
Yeah. Tight quarters. Hope you guys are friends.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It's so interesting of how everyone's coming together. I mean, space policy is such a neat thing to think about and learn and read, and the fact that they're just able to absorb them. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay, well, you're just 2 new people on the team. Come on board. You're part of the team now. We'll figure out a way to get you down there. I mean, think about that. Back in the day, that was a death sentence. There was no.
Yeah.
Nowadays, We've got things that, the stuff that they're talking about in the moon. I've sat on a bunch of economic meetings regarding what should the economy look like on the moon, and what's the Draco and all this stuff going to the Mars and all that. What is that going to lead to? It's really fascinating stuff, and that's where science thrives on trying to solve problems. When you get a bunch of real smart folks together and they try to
Mhm.
solve problems, is there I mean, the private sector is not doing everything right. Let's be clear. I think one of the rockets just burned up on reentry just this past week, and so they're going to have to look at that and determine what went wrong. But NASA had some pretty big problems too back in the day, and I think science as a whole is filled with failures. But you got to keep, you got to stand back up and try it again, try it again, try it again until you get it right. I just heard um, uh, Elon Musk was talking, and I apologize for not knowing exactly who he was talking to or what he was on, but he had said something along the lines of, "I think we've come full circle." And the interviewer said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "When it comes to cars, the airbags and the sensors are so advanced they can tell whether it's an infant in the seat, whether it's a toddler in the seat, whether it's an adult, whether they're sitting or leaning forward or turned around and looking back. They can tell that, and it can change the speed and the way that the airbags are deployed." He believes what he was saying was that we don't even need seatbelts anymore. We've come full circle. Airbags can far exceed what seatbelts can do. And I
Huh.
saw, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. He's smarter in that area, and he's doing all those tests for Tesla. But it's kind of an interesting thing because we talk about seatbelts all the time. It took
Right.
30 years to get, as a policy, took 30 years to get seatbelts kind of
Right.
acclimated to both men and women and the old folks and the young folks and grandfather the cars in. And then if you go to Japan right now, they don't have big cars. Most people don't drive. Everyone takes mass transportation. When you go to Japan, the first thing you'll notice is when you're stopped at a red light, you'll see kids crawling around the back of the car. And it's like fingers on a chalkboard. You're like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. But the way that their society's set up, it's small. You don't go very far. You don't drive big cars. You don't go very fast. Only primarily, most of the drivers are men because it's like $6,000 or $8,000 to get your driver's license. Like, there's reasons why all the stereotypes come. The way they have their society, it's not the same priorities. And so they didn't prioritize seatbelts the same way we do here. And here it looks really odd when you go there because it just seems like it's out of place.
Hmm.
Um, so as a policy perspective, it's kind of fun to talk about. But now you're like, we might not even need seatbelts anymore because airbags have come. That's like a big eye opener. And he knows way more than me. But I'm like, I wonder if that's true. I suspect it is. He knows more than me. But then what would that mean? What would that look like?
Speaking of like mass transit, it's weird that I live in Indianapolis and I can't even get on a train, even though there's a train station, but I can't get on a train here in Indy and go to Chicago. Should be able to. Why?
Yeah.
It's weird. We're probably all thinking this is like the Wild West of the new age, the new era. But like we're not all that in America, not great at some of the old stuff too. Just the mass transit. How can we get more people? But I think I don't want to lay my thoughts out there too much. But Chelsea, what do you think about the ability of getting more mass transit going and what your
We got an Amtrak that speeds by here. It might go by and you might hear my building shake here in a minute. But we got Amtrak that speeds by here a couple times a day because we have a train station in Kalamazoo that goes Kalamazoo to Chicago. So we don't have that problem. We have mass transit.
But Albert, you bring up a really good point. I mean, if you look at where the cities came from, I mean, most of the cities started on the water and the waterways globally. Like they most of them are by the water. And in the US, they're what? They're about 30 miles apart. And that's because that's where the Pony Express would go 30 miles before they need to change horses, right? And so they'd go 30 miles and they'd change horses. And so you kind of had these things. They did a big push with connecting all the railways going east where all the people were to the west. But you're further south, right? They went from big city Detroit, so Detroit, Chicago. There's a train that goes that distance and then it keeps going west, right? But Indianapolis is what? A little further south. So you guys miss the east to west dynamic. And so now you're using
There's
buses
another
to
clue
get
to that
up.
too. Indianapolis is the largest city without water.
There you go. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So we're screwed. No train, no water.
And you guys are a
We have
huge
trains, but it's in
semi truck
South
hub.
Florida.
Like all the semi trucks go through Indianapolis. Like you guys are a huge hub for like transportation.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that there aren't any rails. I'm looking it up.
Yeah, not for people. You can take,
That's a,
like, you can
that's
jump
a
on
business idea for your viewers, Albert. That's a business idea.
I
There
know, right?
you go.
I'm looking up Amtrak schedule right now.
I wonder who can jump in and be a next Elon Musk for trains. Or somebody's talking about the other day of how oh my gosh, like the Hindenburg and all that kind of stuff, like those that was all ended up being bullshit. So I'm really curious, like the ability of having some mass transit that you could use the blimps and stuff like that.
I mean, I think blimps are probably not the way to go. But it's interesting. You have one big failure, you have something blow up in flames on TV and everybody, or was it film? I forget. It might not have been TV, but it was filmed at the very least. Um, and that kills a sector. You look at the Challenger and the Discovery. Those, if they had happened a little earlier in the space program, there might not be a space program. That sort of stuff could have killed it. I think right now the progress you're seeing with drones is light and day. I mean, they're coming a long way with these drones. I suspect that drones will be versus the what you're talking with balloons and things. I think these drones are just going to keep growing like crazy until they dominate delivery, transportation, logistics.
Could be a lot of opportunity there for Chelsea printing out some parts for drones.
Tempting.
Tempting.
So Amtrak discontinued the Hoosier State Line between Indianapolis and Chicago in 2019 after Indiana cut funding for it.
Thanks, Indiana. Dicks.
Well, Google, that was just Google. That was my first Google search, so it could be wrong. I didn't verify any other sources.
Probably.
That was the first thing that came up.
But push it then. 5 years ago, huh? Right before COVID.
We used to blame COVID. I blame COVID for random things when I feel lazy about something. I'm like, oh, COVID. Sorry.
Wiped out so many things. Brought things to a halt. Yeah. Well, now we're almost at an hour and a half. So I told you guys this goes fast. So what's still on the table that we need to talk about?
Kenneth, do you go by Kenneth or you go by Ken? Kenny?
I go by Ken or Kenneth. I always spell it out whenever I'm. Ken is Davis is a generic name, so I always throw my middle initial in there to try to distinguish me from all the other Ken Davises. Yeah, I've got a twin brother. I answer to a lot of names.
Okay. Do you use social media for your nonprofit? Like, do you use LinkedIn and Facebook and like TikTok or any of those?
We do. We use LinkedIn primarily. So when we bring in all the young professionals, we kind of require we use mostly LinkedIn, and we do our stuff as a nonpartisan. We get them to write in a nonpartisan way. When they go to college right now, colleges are really partisan, and so students are taught, hey, if you don't like something, flip the desk and set it on fire. And students are really excited about doing that, and you're like, okay, well, if you burn the system down, you're going to take yourself back 100 years. Why don't you learn how to listen to the other conversation, learn how to listen to the other thought and try to find some common ground? So a lot of my, the diplomat training comes into play is come in and learn how to write generically. If you want to write a policy in the US, you have to write it in a way that you're going to attract both folks on the left and the right. And what that means is that you have to acknowledge that there is different trains of thought, first off, and then acknowledge that, I'm saying, well, a lot of people believe this and a lot of people do believe this. These students can't even subdivide that there's the notion that someone could think differently than them at all, because you can live in a social media environment where you just click the stuff you like and you get rid of all the stuff So they never hear, where does learning take place? When you're sitting across from someone who thinks differently, and at some point in the conversation, or most likely after the conversation, you go, gosh, I'd never thought about that. That's an interesting point. And then it starts, digging a hole. Like, not all learning happens instantaneously. In fact, a lot of learning happens after the fact. So you want to talk to people that think differently. You want to be involved. So we require a neutral, nonpartisan presence on LinkedIn while they're with us. If they're an intern or a fellow, right, we want them to be neutral. And then the goal there is to write an article that will attract both sides of the aisle, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if you're trying to change a policy, you're trying to get people to think. And if you write it with the title, my way's right and your way's wrong, then no one reads past the title. Or the people that like that title will be the only ones that read it through, the actual act or policy. You want them to not know what side you stand on until the very end so that they can at least read the whole thing. And
Right.
oftentimes that requires them to, acknowledge, look, this is a contested issue. There's people that have thoughts, strong, passionate thoughts on both sides. And if you hear me out, I'm going to talk about. I used to do a lot of debating when I was young, and I don't know what type of debate it calls anymore. I should go back and find it. But essentially, when you would debate, you wouldn't know whether you were the pro or the con. So if they gave you you'd have the topic, you'd be able to research it, you get to get smart on your area, but you wouldn't know whether you were the plus or the minus. Are you supportive of it or against it until 30 seconds, 60 seconds before they'd flip a coin and they'd say, you're, Chelsea, you're the pro, Albert, you're the con. Well, that would trigger people that were, they're very passionate about one side and they get the wrong coin flip and now they have to argue the other side. Forcing yourself to look at a subject from the other perspective really helps you understand why they believe what they believe, and understanding that not everyone believes. So yeah, we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's the one main tool we use. We have some stuff on Twitter, and some of the kids apparently there's an Instagram account out there and stuff that's all tied to LinkedIn. I don't know. They're like, yeah, there's a lot. Every time I post on LinkedIn, apparently it also posts on some of these others. They set it up that way, so I didn't know it was doing that. But the 18 to 22-year-olds are super tech savvy, and they have propped me up for years and made me look a little younger than what I am. But yeah, we do a lot of social media. How about you? Are you guys doing a lot on social media?
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, I've had to. It's awkward, but yes. Yep. I
And
think that's
Albert, you're obviously, I mean, you're getting into everyone says you should start a podcast and talk and be the face and the name. And you're obviously, running that route and hopefully seeing some positive change from that. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the using technology for the good and just, I think, especially as veterans, we need the best medicine of the day is human contact, and in person is the best. But just having being like this is pretty damn good too. Just when you see me, I call it baseball and batting practices. When I'm coaching my clients and we're all in the room together and poking fun at the older guy or younger guy or newer guy or guy's been around for a while. It's that camaraderie that we always talk about, and it's nice. I mean, even somebody's got a one guy who he's a killer. So I never want to make this dude upset, but he's done. Oh, he's one of those guys that was like in 3 different branches and all of them were like military police and that kind of thing. And he's also in the sheriff's department, all that kind of stuff. And his when he's off camera, his picture shows up, his little headshot there. Looks like a mugshot, and his name is Michael. So we all now call him Mugshot Mike. And yeah, and there's another guy, Mustache Mike, and all this kind of stuff. So it's so fun. It's so fun. So and it's nice too that even before having a YouTube channel and being as social savvy and having a lot of videos and stuff. When I went to AUSA in DC a couple years ago, a couple of Decembers ago, the December after COVID, I was walking through AUSA, and you know how big that damn thing is, and a colonel jumps out from behind of somewhere, and full bird colonel, and you guys know that there's a bunch of 3-4 star generals running around making big ass decisions. So an '06 jumping out at me in front of me, and he goes, "Hey, Albert, holy shit, I know you. I'm not your client yet, but I'm watch your stuff, man. Good shit, good shit." So it's super cool, and I get to go to, like I said, Tampa. I go to Tampa almost every single year, Nashville for helicopter stuff, and just being around these special operators. And I walk in the door, and they're like, "Holy fuck, Albert, you life changing son of a bitch, man! Get your ass over here." I mean, it's just so cool seeing these guys in person, and thankfully I'm still alive, so I apparently haven't pissed any of my clients off enough for them to kill me. They all know where I live, so no big deal. But it's a blast, and I'm not the crazy thing is I'm not a camera hog, so I'm the same. Like this, I look around and my wife and the ladies and the kids, they're all just taking pictures and selfies, and I'm like, oh yeah, make sure you get me in that so I can use that. So I have to train myself to be more thoughtful and take selfies. So I'm not a camera hog. I'm not afraid of it, thank God. That's a good thing. But you never know how you never realize how much of an impact that has when you just even having a podcast. Like I pay the best guy out there on YouTube to help me and do things and help me grow upward and use the algorithms to my favor and stuff too. So I highly recommend that sort of thing. Because if for everybody out there, there's an ecosystem for a reason. Your nest, wherever the fuck it is, if it's something big, if it's something small, if it's something for free, if it's something, whatever it is, you have it because somebody else doesn't and somebody else needs it. And that's, to me, it's God working through you. So do whatever that is. You can't plan it. One day you'll just go, you know what? Let me just put my hands up and go, God, I'm here for you. Do what you need me to do. And that's what I do. That's why I get to wear my PJs every day. And that's what I call it, my PJs. This is my suit of armor, nice and cozy. And just do good things. And that's all you can do. And I know we want to, now that we think more globally and social media shows us what's going on in an instant from God everywhere. I don't think we're really meant to be that. Like I feel like a lot of times people think that the world is so big and they got to carry everything. No, you don't. That's not your job. Your job is to mostly take care of God and your family, and works somewhere way the fuck down here. So just, I know I'm worse at it too. I have to get coaches to rattle my fucking cage every now and then because I'm such a gritty guy. Like a Ranger said, Army Ranger said, Albert, grit's good until it isn't. Yep, totally right. I'm hard-headed to where I usually go through talk about full circle. I will go full circle and let that bad thing take too long rather than asking for help and guidance. But that's why I'm going to bring this back to the positive, that not only human nature or human contact is good, but also just being able to talk about what's going on and what you're happy about, and have somebody above you, a mentor, especially somebody who knows what you're trying to do and has done it already, to go, yeah, here's a good marketing firm to work with. Here's a good book publisher to work with. Here's a good Nashville people to work with for a podcast. Because there's just so many, going back to LinkedIn or whatever, social media, there's so many different connections, but the one that matters is the one that actually makes shit happen. And that's, work ethic is great, but it has to work and work quickly. That's just me. And I think most of us veterans are that way too. And all you get is today. You can't control 5 years from now or 5 years ago. So that's my thing for every day now, is to pray for today. Hey, just let me do good things today. And then just let them stack up. So Chelsea, what are your thoughts on those sorts of things?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that my favorite thing about social media is that, like my husband and I were just talking about it the other day, that it makes the world a little bit smaller, or a lot smaller, however you choose to use it. If you want, and you can interact as much or as little as you want. We were debating on TikTok, and if we should dive into it or not. We do have a TikTok channel, but we don't use it. We just post like a couple pictures to it, and it's actually pretty terrible. Like we haven't done anything with it. And then we just found out that if we're going to do government contracting, we need to get it off of our phones because you're not allowed to have it for CMMC. So we gotta delete it or just have a work phone that comes in with us for that. So and then delete and not have TikTok on it for that. So I don't know. We gotta figure out what we're gonna do there, or just delete it and get rid of it because it's kind of a waste of time. I don't know. Do you guys use TikTok at all for your businesses, or what are your thoughts?
I don't for my personal stuff, and I just don't believe in that one. That's a step too far. I think there's got to be some. There's a term now out there. There's a song that was made. They call it toxic. So TOKSIK. So I think Ken, you're talking about like the TBIs. I think there's legit brain damage from this kind of shit. You know, just
it makes your concentration so less.
Much less. I mean, just even the scrolling of it, and like you said, it'll show you what you're looking for. So it's like the candy shop. I'm not gonna get into all conspiracy theory shit. I'm just saying, follow the money, and I don't want anybody having some weird access to my bank accounts and shit like that too. Yuck. So that's one security thing I don't like.
I'm gonna shed I'm not a big TikTok guy, nor any of those other Instagram, all that stuff. But I will say, we've gotten quite a few clients from LinkedIn over the years, and we've met some really good folks who, in a professional manner, have helped broaden our understanding of things. In the think tank community, the academic community, both kind of use it. So the LinkedIn is the one that we use. I have some of that stuff set up, but I will say this is some things have recently really changed and blown up. And it was, I'm raising an 7-year-old daughter who's getting ready to turn 8, and she had some pictures done, and somebody else's daughter just got into the movie making business, and they were talking about some things, and there's a thing called backstage. And so I was looking at it, and I'm like, oh man, look, you're looking for a 50-year plus male with military experience to play the next streaming general officer to some sci-fi thing, 18 grand for 4 weeks. I'm like, oh, this is it, dude. I'm going to play General Solo. So I paid the $85 to get the thing, and I created a profile, and I throw my stuff up there. Never hear back from that, right? That's gone. But then people are like, hey, we see you around here. Now you're out there. You're like a little actor thing. And hey, we got a gig for you over here. We're looking for a runway thing. I'm like, I'm not runway ready. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And then I got some professional photos. And then that led to somebody else saying, hey, we need a bodyguard. It says here you were a Marine. Could you be a bodyguard? And so it was 4 hours of filming. And so yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then I go to the shoot, and boom, boom, boom. I got 4 potential gigs from the 4-hour shoot, and that spread to going to another thing, and they needed some guys, kind of like Scarface. Everyone was rushing the house, and everyone was getting shot. So everybody was. I don't know, am I allowed to talk about this? I'm probably not allowed to talk about it yet. But everyone had ski masks on, so it was like, we need guys just to run and fall, right? So I did that, and boom, boom, about this initiative. And they go, you're doing this initiative trying to help veterans. Have you ever thought about doing a documentary? And the answer is no, I never thought about doing a documentary. He goes, well, how many people are you going to talk to on the Hill? I go, if we're lucky, we'll get 3 or 4 members in the House, right? I mean, we're not going to get 100, in the Senate, right? In the House, it's even less, right? So why don't you do a documentary so that you can show it to the staff? And, do you want to cater it to them, or do you want to cater it to the military, or does the military exchange? You want to cater it to the VA? And I'm like, dude, all of those communities need to know what the science is, so all of them can make better decisions. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I just want to expose, look, this is what the science is showing us. We don't think that it's a software thing. We think it's a hardware thing. And if you fix the hardware, even poor software will work really well. Stop trying to come up with better software and the touchy feelies, and fix the brain. Do the brain scan. Do they have a brain injury or not? It's a real quick. It's not complex, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. And if they have a brain injury, then let's start taking it. That all of that. Where I'm going with that is all of that social media kind of stuff led me to now I'm writing a movie. I'm starring in a movie. I've got some production credits. I've got my IMDb is starting to expand. Look, I'm like, it's all comical how it's happened, and it's all happened organically, and now things are growing. I had a meeting before this, which was talking about another script some folks were working on, and then we got to talk about the documentary and how we're going to sign that up, and so it's got me into an entirely different. 2 months ago, I would have laughed at you if you had said you're gonna be a movie star, and I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but it's
You are.
you know
I'm
Probably
going to say
recognize
I met you now.
you're playing a role and you're writing and you're talking to folks that know an industry. And honestly, I mean, I know very little. As military folks, maybe some of the public affairs guys understand that world really well, but an awful lot. I still remember and you guys will appreciate this. It was Matthew McConaughey's. It was like his homage to a Christmas Carol. I think it was like Ghost of Christmas Past or something like that. And the bride's dad was a Army sergeant major or Marine sergeant major, and he kept saying "hua" through the whole movie, "hua, hua, hua." And I'm sitting there going, "You telling me you didn't have a single PFC on that movie set that could tell you that you're using a Marine
all
and
one.
you're seeing the Army thing? How there's no one on your set that's a military guy?" And so it's like fingernails on a chalkboard when you see that stuff. You're like, man. So so they just called me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be the military advisor. We're doing something with the Space Force. We know very little." And I was like, "Ooh, that's not my forte." But I want to make sure it's done right. So I'll look this stuff up and I'll call the guys and make sure that all the stuff is labeled and tasked, and definitely make sure that their little ditty is. I don't know what the Space Force ditty is, but we'll make sure it's not wrong at the end.
Mhm.
So it's kind of an exciting thing, and hopefully it'll grow into stuff. We'll see.
So I need to tell you guys this since you got me excited about a couple things for both of you. So I need to introduce Ken to Rachel. Can you introduce Ken to Paul? So Paul lives near us, and he's a documentary filmmaker. So we'll get you guys connected. And he's like I don't know how many Emmys the dude has been awarded. So another guy that I interviewed for my book a while back, he wants to be this like Steven Spielberg as a veteran filmmaker. So I think he's out of Savannah, Georgia. So not too far down the road from me. I'll probably jump on what's that, 65, whatever it is, 95. Go see him. But then we have also, who else we got there? So Chelsea, I need to get you connected with. There's a woman, I forget her name right off the top of my head, but I can look it up. But she has 8 kids. She and her husband are both former military, Army. And she was a medevac pilot, and her husband was acquisitions. And they do the government contracting. I'll call it the crumb level, because when you got billions of dollars moving around here, the crumbs come down, and it's a lot of money.
We'd be there.
Yeah. So, and then I can also get Chelsea. Both of you guys are introduced to one of my guys who does special operations contracts, and he gained a $5 billion contract, not this past March, but March before that for SOCOM. And yeah.
I mean, I would take a $5 billion contract.
I know, right? So, yeah, but the lady, she's such a trip, and you'd like her. She was too nice to be a pilot. That's what it was. She was too nice to be a pilot. But then she found out that the government was taking her money from her, and she said F-bombs a lot. She's like, I got all these damn kids, and motherfucking fuckers are taking my fucking money. It's hilarious. But yeah, so I'm trying to get Paul on my podcast too. But yeah, Rachel knows Paul real well. I think I'm saying that right, Paul. thinking of him correctly. I know who I'm thinking of, so maybe he's not the right name, but yeah. Well, I know we're going to go behind the scenes here in a couple seconds, but any last prompts that you guys want to talk about, event stuff? Ken had such a pivot there, harsh pivot. That was good. That was good shit, man. So, but definitely, if there's anything before I turn it over to you guys, I'll give the goodbye to everybody and make sure you guys are connecting on everybody out there. Connect with Chelsea and Ken on LinkedIn and socials, and make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing to what we're doing, because this is the way to get the word out. And I know there's other people out there who want to be on my podcast, so make sure you guys are reaching out to me through my website, and Ken and Chelsea will make sure that they get any of their links and stuff and events. Make sure we get that in the little descriptions and buttons and stuff. So make sure we do that. But we'll go behind the scenes here in a couple of seconds. But you guys have anything else you want to put out in public right now?
Nope. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, definitely.
Albert, thanks for having me on the show. The one date that I have, it looks like if we do the documentary, it looks like May 3rd is when we're trying to have it done by, so we can do the what do you call it, the big grand opening. It's called something. The reveal, the big first time movie thing. We do it up in DC, and we're looking at May 3rd, and so that's the date that we're looking to release that. So we'll have more information behind there. But maybe what we can do is Albert bring you up, and Chelsea bring you, and you can bring your Central Michigan question.
So make sure you write this down. So there's Merging Veterans and Players. Have you heard of this? So it's a .org, and but they did a movie, and the Green Beret. There's two owners, two founders, and one of them is a former Green Beret. He played for the NFL too for 1 or 2 seasons, something like that. And I think he played for Seattle. But yeah, this website will show that. But that guy was in a movie that they produced and all that kind of stuff too. And Susie, very long silver-haired woman, is the lead for all the mental health side. And I'm not gonna say who she worked with, but she is like the lady for the stars, psychiatrist for the stars out in LA. So she's super connected, and no shit, I'm telling you, she called me out of nowhere once because a client of mine knows her. She wanted to know more about what I knew, and that was right before the debut, I think is what you're looking for, word. But that was the same thing they were running to, was like, we chatted in the summer and they had a September debut for their movie. So that's what they were running into. But they could give you a hell of a lot more knowledge base on movie stuff too.
No, yeah, awesome. Happy to. And anything, Chelsea, great to meet you. If you need anything, are you in Kalamazoo? And what was the name of your company one more time?
So it's Smith Metal, and we're a small town in between Kalamazoo and Battle Creek called Augusta.
Got it. Like Paw, something out that way?
Other direction. We're like the Pawpaw's close though.
Were you allowed to talk about Bell's Beer or Bell's Brewery?
Oh yeah.
They were growing when we were in college, and they were working out of a garage in a small thing downtown, and then they got that massive loan. And I remember in Japan walking down a grocery store and seeing Bell's Beer from Kalamazoo in this little bitty shop grocery store. It was cool.
I know, it's crazy. We saw him. I remember when we were stationed at Fort Drum, we saw him in the PX at Fort Drum, and I was like, "What?" But he just sold out and retired like a couple years ago to New Holland Brewing Company. So.
Oh, really?
He's completely out of the business now.
Well, that was a fun run, man. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Good couple decades. So that's the local beer, Albert. The local beer from all the college kids knew about it. Yeah.
Oberon.
Yeah, we've got Sun King that got big, and now they're in a lot of places too. And now there's a lot of veterans out there that are getting into distilling and stuff like that. So just one of those garage passions that can be scalable if led in the right direction, and the usual stuff as scalability requires.